Alrighty, good morning, everybody. It is Friday, March 14th of 2025, and I think we have a pretty good lesson for today, piggybacking off of the last two lessons that we did in regards to finding a lack of patterns from the lows, telling us we would most likely push to lower lows before we get a larger bounce. If you just go back to the last two videos in our series here, that should probably be enough to explain what's going on here. But we'll go ahead and pull up the higher time frames. Do a quick recap. Just a couple days ago, you guys remember we did a broadcast talking about seeing not enough clues from the lows for an expectation of a much larger bounce in the market. And that's why we were expecting, and we also did have bearish signals from the highs as we came into whatever that was. It was March, must be March 11th, right? This is now 3 days ago. So we expected before the market opened on March 11th that we would most likely come down, make a lower low, and maybe at that point we would get the reversal pattern that I'm talking about. And we saw in our lesson, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before that, but we got that very bullish pattern from the lows. And we've talked about seeing it on the 4 hour as well. Back on March 11th, we didn't have the signal that would typically lead a larger attempt for a bounce. But we did get it there at the end of the day on March 11th. So when we came into the 12th, we kind of started to see some clues for the breakout, but then they, remember, we talked about this, I believe, they rejected right off of that major swing low from March 7th. They came right up to it with all the bullish clues and got the big rejection. And if you recall from the videos we did a couple days ago, I told you that with all this stuff happening, with the rejection off of that swing low from March 7th, which was our roadmap level, by the way, and it was pulling back, I told you that, at least maybe not in the videos that I shared publicly, but to my members, I told you we're still waiting for our daily time frame to give us a bullish reversal pattern. And when we came into the market yesterday, this is the market, I believe, was trading up top over here, and our RVI didn't have an official swing yet, right? It was still fluid. This candlestick was still in motion, and we were talking about wanting to see an ideal pattern. Let's see if I can draw this out. This ideal pattern of making that low from the March 11th low, bouncing out, and then as we came into this candlestick yesterday, let me just zoom this in here. I told you that ideally what we need to see, in fact, if you were to go back to the recording yesterday, I did this exact thing. I told you that we most likely are going to come down and test the March 11th low or push a little bit lower. And at that point, we might get a slightly lower low on price, but we might get a slightly higher high on RVI. And if that does happen, this could be the first bullish signal that we really have on the daily time frame for the last 2 weeks. Right? We've been selling off, and every time we've sold off, for the last 2, maybe even 2.5 weeks, I told you we don't have any clues for a bounce, right? Well, as we come in this morning, we're starting to get the very pattern I warned you about yesterday, and also the reason why I told you yesterday, most likely, since we're bouncing off that 1 hour and 4 hour signal from here, most likely that's not getting much further than the swing we got a day or two ago. Most likely it's coming back because we need our daily time frame to print a reversal pattern, which it just did, by the way, from yesterday's low. And if it closes today up above yesterday's high, which was, let's get the number, of course, one thing blocking my data box, it's 56.23. So if the bulls can actually get through 56.23 this morning, and it closes up there by the end of the day, we now have an actual reversal pattern in the market. At the moment, it's just a potential signal. We see that it's definitely there, but if we don't close up through the high of the signal candle, we're not going to have the little rotation in the market, right? We need the hook. We need that hook that breaks through the high of the signal candle, and then we'll have an official bullish pattern from yesterday's low. So this is exactly the type of stuff. And what's really interesting and why this kind of piggybacks on the last two public videos I released is because we were talking about seeing the very same pattern only down on the 4-hour chart for the last couple days, right? So on March 11th, we got the lower low we were expecting after the market opened. We got the reversal pattern. You see that? Lower low, higher low on the RVI. And we did start to get the trend out to break through the previous swing and got through it. But again, I told you a day or two ago, this bounce is not a bounce expecting to come all the way back up through 50% of last week. This was a clue for a small bounce, and we were expecting that one of the roadmap levels, as they push out, was going to be the next resistance for the push lower. And the reason being is because my daily time frame was not showing a bullish reversal pattern, right? So I'm trying to kind of just lay it out as clear as possible here that I typically do not expect a big rotation in the market unless my daily time frame is cluing me into it. So you can see here, let's go all the way back. As we broke through this swing here at 59.38, which basically was on this day, remember we said as we came into February 26th, the day after that candlestick, we don't have a bullish signal from the 25th low. We do have, obviously, this big hammer candle that is somewhat of a clue for a rotation, but we don't have a nice bullish signal. So it tells me we're most likely retesting this low or pushing to lower lows. And what happened? The next day, we tried to break through the high of the candle, came back down, closed about 50%, and then the next day, we rolled right through it. And as these days continue to build up to lower lows and lower lows, we never got a bullish reversal pattern. However, as we come into this morning, we do have our first signs of that very pattern. So after, we needed to break through 59.35. So, here we are quite literally 400 points lower. And for the whole 400-point sell-off, I told you every time we inch lower that I didn't quite have any clues for a reversal, right? So that's why I love relying on this. Obviously, the hourly and the 4-hour are going to clue us in to some of the smaller rotations in the market so we can make some money on the short time frames within all of this movement. But that when that daily time frame comes on board and puts the hat on, that's where you typically get a rotation. Now, I might have to eat these words. We all know with trading, nothing's a guarantee. And first of all, this isn't an official pattern just yet. All we can say is it's almost there and almost completed. So this could roll over this morning, and we could continue to push to lower lows on RVI, and price continues to push to lower lows as well, and we don't have that pattern. But like I said, trading is conditional, biases are conditional, and if we can get through yesterday's high, and this morning if we can stay above 50% of the previous candlestick where our pattern is technically there, where the signal is forming, then that will confirm that signal. So this morning, staying above 50% of yesterday's candlestick and getting through the high will confirm it. And then technically, what you'll probably see here is the RVI will close up there, something like that. You'll have that beautiful higher low on RVI, and then you'll have that lower low on price. And like I said, that's the reversal pattern that you would want to see before there's a much larger rotation in the market. All right, so took about 10 minutes to say the same thing 10 times in a row. But hopefully that's kind of putting the picture together for you guys. Now, not too long ago, this is now back on February 19th, I guess just about a month ago, we had the opposite situation. We were coming up to test up into the major highs from January of this year. We got a clue for the bears on our daily time frame. And you can even see that I drew that on there back on that day. That's still there from that day, I'm pretty sure. And what did we say? If the bears can hold price below 50% of this bearish potential signal candle, then we're going to get a confirmation of this signal, and it could lead the next major pullback. And from there, we're now 6160 down to 5500. So we're now 600 points lower from there. And that's why I wait for this time frame to light me in. Now, here's an example where we get signals, they get a little bit of follow through, and then we get counter signals, and it gets messy, right? So it's not a guarantee every time you get a daily signal that you're going to get a 600-point sell-off, which is ridiculous, right? But it is typically the beginning of a pretty notable and major rotation in the market. And of course, sometimes it can be choppy, bearish, goes 20, 30, 40 points, bullish, pops 10, 20 points, fails. You know, it's not always going to be perfect, but I think you guys can see pretty clearly here that some of the most notable rotations for the last couple of months, and it could go back years if we wanted to, has got this daily time frame on board. Okay, so this morning we find ourselves in a potential scenario that looks very much like the beginnings of a lot of these other rotations you see in the market. So that's basically the lesson today. And this pattern, which I think I've already said this point, but this very pattern and this very scenario that we expected to happen, and it's working out perfectly, was the very same pattern we talked about and anticipated on our 4-hour chart just the last 2 or 3 days, right? We saw it here. We expected lower lows for the bounce, and then we saw it down here. As we were pulling back the other day, expecting a lower low to then bounce out, and that's what we're getting here. And now that we have there's the penultimate low, now here's maybe the final low, we now get the daily on board. Okay, so now you can see how they're all starting to line up. Hourly from the major low, 4-hour from the major low, daily from the major low, well, daily potential. So now if we can close today above there, we now have all 3 time frames agreeing, and we could be in for a pretty nice retracement of this big sell-off here, right? And what sticks out the most? Probably this ledge right here, right where we have this basic area around 5,800, right? Obviously, plenty of levels on the way up that could hold the market down. And, you know, it's anyone's guess if we're going to have the real strength from here to actually break back out, right? We have 50% of last week all the way up there at 58.36. So we do have more than 200 points to the upside just to get through 50% of last week's sell-off there. So have a great morning, guys. We're going to go jump down to the short time frames, get ready for the open. Okay, so what were we talking about for yesterday? Again, it was the same thing I was just talking about for our lesson there, right? As we came into the open yesterday, we were expecting a lower low compared to the overnight swing there, right? We had the bullish clues, but we didn't have a daily clue for a reversal. So I told you most likely that push up into 56, whatever it was up top, and the pullback from there was all we were going to get. And if we could stay below 50% of the day before, it was a clue for a push to lower lows. And remember, the low was right around 55.27. And so let's just kind of zoom out and look at what happened here. The high of yesterday our roadmap level, basically to the tick, sells off. It holds 55.27 there for a nice bounce to reject off the other roadmap level, and then comes down in the low of yesterday, our roadmap level to the tick, basically. Pretty awesome if you ask me. And we could even zoom in and take a closer look there. All right, they open, they hold the previous daily close for 3 tests, pull it back, we get the bounce off the roadmap level here to the FMA. There's your scalp. Comes down a little lower, tries to hold below the roadmap level, right? It bounces, rejects off the FMA, and then holds below the level until they pop through and then hold it to the upside. And then there is the high of the day. Comes right up in, and that's it. You can see it then steps down, previous daily close, back end of the VWAP, back end of Hopeful, back end of that roadmap level once it gets back below it, right? And then we just kind of sell up, and you can see some great rotations. There's the 26th level, which should have been a level you should have expected that type of reaction from. Rejects off of the back end of the roadmap level, comes down through 26 and holds it to the back end there. There's that. Let's zoom it in so you can see, just quite literally sticks his tongue out, gives him a nice French kiss, and bam, rejects right off of it, right? Comes right up to it. There's the wick right into it, comes down, and then the low of the day with a bullish divergence, 1 tick in front of the lower level there, right? And then at the end of the day, you can see a pretty nice little rally there, down up these levels, holding the 200 on the pullback, and then obviously a little messy, so came back and held the back end of the 200. And there, at the end of the day, beautiful short opportunity once again, as we're failing, back end of the 200, but more importantly, back end of the roadmap level there. Double top if you didn't short the first test. Second test gave you a really clear divergence. First test did too, and then the pullback. So some great rotations throughout the day. Again, my trades here were just as things were selling off and we were pushing through the major swing low at 26 area. We came down in, and I figured why not, with that big divergence at the 200 here, see if we can come retest this lower, maybe push down into it. And so I got short. I added right here with, you can see all this divergence forming every time they push up right into that level. And so I put another position on and got a little bit of a trade, and then it came back and I flipped the script and went the other way. So as it came back and we broke through the 200 and we got our crossover, as we pulled back into this right here, look at this pattern that was going on. They were pulling back right to the roadmap level, and this was very, very extreme in terms of divergence. So I went ahead. I know it was a super risky spot, but you have to understand there was a strong kind of reversal feel here and a lot of volatility to the upside that was just buying really strong. So I just went in with small size, put it on, and then I saw the divergence on the FMA, which was the test of the previous resistance right there. So 2 very aggressive trades and a pretty decent scalp. I got 5 points off there, more than 5 points really. It just didn't go and hit my 10-point target down at 55.10 half. And then came back, and then, like I said, 2 aggressive entries to see if we could get the pop to here, and sure enough, we got the pop to there and pulled back. So those were my trades for the day. Not too bad. And then you can see we kind of made that little back and forth move there at the end of the day, right? So that brings us here into the overnight session, where we're obviously trying to recover back up. And remember, we do have all the bullish clues now from yesterday's low: hourly bullish signal, 4-hour bullish signal, daily potential bullish signal. So as we come into the open this morning, staying above 50% of yesterday and getting through the high of yesterday confirms this potential bullish signal that we have down here from yesterday's low. And that could be the next hook in the market that leads to the attempt to break back up to the all-time high area, right? And then just be aware on the way up that 50% of last week is sitting up there at 58.38, right? That's the right level. Where's my... I didn't update that. No, it must be that far away at this point. I forgot we just keep selling off here. So yeah, all the way up at 58.30, whatever, 36 or something. So getting up through there is really important from the higher time frame perspective, right? All the way back up into here, 58.36, I believe. But the first clue here for the bulls and this daily potential signal is staying up where we are now. We're up above 50% of the day before, which is basically our eye level there at 55.65, and get up through the high of the day before. Right, so that's the first kind of clue. We've already checked the first mark for the bulls because we're trading up above 50% of yesterday. And basically what we have here is 50% of yesterday, the Holy Orange power level, and the roadmap level all within a couple ticks of each other. In fact, 50% of yesterday is, for all intents and purposes, our roadmap level at 55.66, right? So staying above there, first good check mark for the bulls, getting through the high of yesterday, confirms, as long as we close up there, confirms the daily reversal pattern. All right, so that's it, my friends. And then obviously, if I have to eat my words this morning, and the bears pull price back through 50% of yesterday and get us back down through the close of yesterday, it now looks obviously like this is a failed move. Obviously, right now there's a bit of a bearish potential on our hourly time frame from this high. So if this does come back down, get through the previous daily close. Obviously, I've said obviously 3 times in a row here. We do have our roadmap level at 55.26, which we all know has been very relevant. That could be the scene of the next bounce. But getting back through 50% of the previous day and below the previous daily close is not a great thing for the bullish side. All right, and lower lows here, for all we know, the next roadmap level below us will be the next area for a bounce, because as you can see, yesterday's low was our roadmap level. 2 days ago, the low, basically our roadmap level. A couple days before that, came right into the roadmap level, right? So you get the idea, and all the rejections right off these roadmap levels, right? There's that 56.70 rejection off March 7th low, right off the roadmap level. Okay, so that's it, my friends. We will see you on Monday, I believe, unless there's some type of holiday I'm forgetting. So I will see you all next week. Have a great trading morning, and we will see you then. Take care.